Well, joining me now to discuss that defense bill is Republican Congressman Don Bacon. He's a retired military officer himself, sits on the House Armed Services Committee, watching this very closely.
Thank you.
And quite publicly in support of some of the provisions in here, including that funding for Ukraine, really the first money the U.S. is sending Ukraine in some time. $400 million, is that symbolic or is it significant?
It's good for 1 year military aid that we normally do in the budget. I would also support, an extra bill that would be $30 or $40 billion, like we've been doing with the previous administration. We need to be doing more for Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's in our national security interest. If Ukraine falls, I have no doubt that Moldova will be next. Maybe Georgia or Azerbaijan. General Petraeus is saying the Baltics would be very vulnerable. So, and China's watching how we respond.
Yeah.
So I'm a very strong advocate for the money that was in the bill, but I think we need to be doing more. Yeah. There's a lot of other things we could be doing. Freezing Russian assets and taking it, giving it to Ukraine, and secondary sanctions on countries that are doing trade with Russia.
I want to touch on China before we do, but given that we are in the midst of peace negotiations for Ukraine, or at least Europe and Ukraine talking about it, not so much Russia at this point, do you believe that Donald Trump is sufficiently backing Ukraine? He had a comment just in the last 24 hours saying, well, the longer Ukraine delays, it's understandable why Russia is continuing the war. He often, as you know, and you criticize him for this, will make comments that seem like he's leaning towards Russia.
He seems to act like he's an equal, like a referee in a game. He should not be. Ukraine has an elections. Zelensky was freely elected. They want to go to a free market system. They want rule of law. They want to be aligned with America and Europe. And they know that the threat of Russia. Russia's the invader. Putin's killed all his rivals. Yeah. And he's bombing cities every night. We should be so clear which side that we stand on. And it does bother me. It bothers me that the president seems to not have the moral clarity on who's at fault in this war and where our national security interests lie. Yeah. And so, yes, I try to push him on it. And I don't know, so this may be done for negotiating tactics, but I don't think it works. I mean, Putin made it clear yesterday he is not going to stop until he controls all of Ukraine. He said that publicly. Yep. We should just take him at his word. Yeah. And that means we should be sending cruise missiles to Ukraine and doing everything we can, because the only way to stop this war, unless Russia prevails, you got to break Putin's will. And you got to make the war too costly or convince him that it's unwinnable. But we've not done that yet.
Here in this bill, you had Republicans willing to contradict the president on some things, a little bit of Ukraine funding, for instance, but also, for instance, forcing to some degree the defense secretary to release those videos. You had the Epstein vote, as you know. You had 4 Republicans break with the president on health care subsidies. You have long been willing to stand out and say, when you disagree with the president, which, as you know, is a rarity in this country, in the current political climate, do you find that your Republican colleagues are more willing today to say no to Trump than they were few weeks ago, months ago?
Yes, but I also think it's to the president's advantage. I mean, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but having honest feedback from within the party and how we can do things better, if we can create some course corrections, maybe with tariffs, Epstein files, whatever it may be, and it puts them in a better spot, more successful, it's good. I mean, I always say in the military, feedback is the breakfast of champions, right? When you get feedback and pushback, maybe instead of going 3-6-0, now you go 3-4-0, and you're in a better heading. That's what we want to do here. I think what we did right now with the tax credit extensions for ACA, I think it was a bad decision. We had a very good compromise bill, bipartisan, that could win in the Senate, but the leadership decided not to put that bill on the floor, which forced some of our folks to embrace the Hakeem Jeffries bill, which I think's bloated with unnecessary. It's a third of the money doesn't even go to folks' premiums. It gets put in the phantom accounts, they call it. So we could have had a much better bill on the floor that would have passed and the Senate would have passed. We still may get there, but it's going to be January, and I think late to need. But right. But I think we offer a good voice. I don't want to be critical. It's not criticism for criticism's sake. It's about trying to do things better for our country.
Let's talk about Venezuela. As you know, President Trump has vowed to strike Venezuela soon, although he's said that for months now. Today he said he wouldn't mind telling Congress about land strikes in Venezuela, but he doesn't believe he has to tell Congress. Does the president have the law wrong?
I believe so. I voted yesterday twice for the declaration of war, or the war powers resolutions. I support the strikes on these narcotic boats. I mean, we're losing 100,000 people a year, but when the president says and his team we're going to be doing continued strikes and continued hostilities, by definition, I believe the Constitution and the law as written says the president has to come to Congress and get authorization. And if you're going to do a ground war or an air war in Venezuela, he has not made that case.
Yeah.
So far, he's made a case for the boats, but we don't know what's really going on with Venezuela. My hunch is he's trying to pressure Maduro out.
Right.
By the way, he's a bad guy. Maduro is, he took the richest country in South America and made it the poorest. But we don't really know what the president's goals are here. They've not briefed him. We do know about the boats. But in the end, I want to protect our Article 1 provisions in the Constitution. And if we're going to have continued hostilities, I do believe the president should make his case to Congress. We vote on it.
Would you vote to support, or at least give the president the right to order military action against Venezuela?
Not at this point. Mm-hmm. Now, I do think the boats are. I would vote yes on the boats. I mean, I've lost family members. I think most of us have from drugs, and I got the top secret briefings that convinced me they have good intelligence. They know what they're doing. This is not a random hits on these boats. These are cartel people that are trying to get drugs in the United States. And the warning's out there. They know now they're going on the ocean at their own risk if you got cocaine on your boat.
But are they the right targets for this? Because as you know, the majority of those drugs are not coming to the U.S., and it's certainly not the main source of fentanyl in this country, which is responsible for those.
Yeah, it's China to Mexico.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with going after the cocaine boats, but you're right. It's not going after the fentanyl. And I think Mexico, though, is working with us on this, which is good. I mean, I've met with the Mexican president this summer, and she was eager to, hey, I want to cooperate. But they want to protect their sovereignty.
Right.
But they do want to work with us on intelligence and whatever other aids we can give them to crack down on the drug shipments through Mexico. But yet, we also know that China's sending a lot of that stuff there, and they're putting fentanyl together and shipping it north. We got to work on that as well. So I think your question's a good one. Does it answer the problem? Probably not fully what we're doing, but I do think this part of this is to interdict the drugs coming out of Colombia and Venezuela. I think, though he hasn't told us this, I believe the rest of this is trying to pressure Maduro out.
Yeah. As you know, inflation is still a big problem in this country. The number that came out today was a little lower than expectations, although there are some questions about whether all the data was complete. In his address last night, Trump claimed once again inflation has stopped, which we know is false. It's in the numbers. Does he not know the facts, in your view?
Well, first of all, we should be clear-eyed as Republicans. We just had some bad elections in Virginia, New Jersey, Tennessee. We won Tennessee, but all of them are about 10 points worse than they were a year ago.
Yeah.
And so I think that we have to be objective, that there's a concern. And if you ask the voters what's the problem, in every case it's the economy, right? So the president's polling in the low 30s, favorables on the economy. That's a losing number for a year from now, and we should know that. Now, the president has, I think, a great point. It was 9% at the worst for when President Biden was president. Now it's 2.7%. So in that case, it's a lot better.
The rate of inflation is down. Yeah.
Gas prices are great, so he'll focus on that. But the reality is the average family going to the supermarket is still suffering over 2 or 3 years of this inflation. They're not seeing an improvement overall. So and that's what's being reflected in the polling.
Does he risk appearing detached from the reality that Americans, Republican or Democrat, are facing with prices?
You know, we saw in the previous president, too, they try to put a shine on something. But I think it's better just to be honest, objective. We know most families are not seeing an improvement. Their pay is just starting to catch up with the inflation rate. That means you've had 2 or 3 years where they were falling behind, and they're going to the supermarket, they're paying a lot more. So I think it's just better to be candid, and then let's deal with it. I think our tax law will be helpful in the end. I just saw the Tax Foundation said the average family will pay $3,500 less a year in taxes. That's going to be helpful. And I think we're going to create more jobs with some of the other tax incentives we have out there. The downside is I believe that tariffs are undermining what could be happening if the tax law was left on its own, we could be seeing a lot more progress. But this tariff policy, in the end, consumers pay for it.
You're not running next term. You've decided to try something different for now. Would you be nervous if you were running this term based on where the president's approval is? And
I ran nervous every time. In 2020, President Biden beat President Trump by 6 points. Harris beat him in my district last cycle by 5 points. So I've always had a hard race. But I would see there would be challenges. When you have the top of the ticket in the low 40s or high 30s, depending on the poll. So I had to get 12,000 Harris voters last time. That's not common. And I don't know how many times you can do that, right? So I think it would be a challenge. I believe I have very positive numbers right now. People know I'm honest. I'm not a Republican first. I'm an American first. I want to do what's right for our country. But there is no easy race in my district for either side, and I would expect a hard one this time.
Congressman Don Bacon, always good to have you on.
you.
Thanks so much for taking the time.